Hello, this is Donna from Love Consciousness, and welcome to this little reflection um, on transmutation of old energetic patterns and how I see this transmutation of old energetic patterns as a purpose that all of humanity that has decided to move through this ascension process has in common. So before I begin, I would just like to say that all of these reflections are based on my own experience, my own understandings, and I share them because I feel that some of them may be helpful for some people. So take what resonates with you and discard the rest. So, as I've been reflecting on this idea of transmuting energy, first of all, I'd like to say that one of the things that I realized is that I have been moving through this process consciously, at least, for at least 10 years now. And one of the reasons for moving through this process consciously was because of my role as a therapist. So I really understood this idea, if you like, because that's what it started as, was an idea of releasing the trauma that we have stored within the physical body. Now, when I started my journey, it was because I was suffering from depression. And so it was removing the traumas in association with my depression that really helped me understand this idea of removing trauma from the physical body. And so to begin with, it was nothing to do with ascension. To begin with, it was just, I'd got to a point in my life where I was very tired and very weary of constantly feeling like I was struggling emotionally, constantly feeling like there was something wrong with me, constantly feeling like I couldn't find a balance, particularly when it came to my emotional and mental health. Now, one of the patterns that's being transmuted at the moment is the victimizer program. And for anyone out there who has suffered from depression, being depressed, it's very, very easy to take the victim stance within your depression. And while I was depressed, I would reflect back a lot on my childhood, and I would look at all of the difficult situations that I had to face as a child, and all of the trauma and the chaos that I had been born into. Now, I would like to just say at this point, I no longer take a victim stance, and I don't blame anyone for the experiences that I have gone through. And of course, it's because I understand it from a much higher level now, and I understand that I created those experiences because it was part of my purpose. Now, I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. So here I am, just in my very early 30s, wanting to just feel better, wanting to find a balance in my life, wanting to find this elusive happiness that what I perceived other people experienced. And for me, it was something that I only ever got to taste in very small bursts before I was moving through another emotional roller coaster ride, another emotional trigger, another emotional upset. So I began this journey of digging deep and releasing trauma, releasing upset, releasing anything that I could think of, really, consciously, that had caused me pain, that had caused me discomfort. I began forgiving endlessly forgiving people that I felt had somehow wronged me. Um, I had the realization that staying in the victim mentality was not serving me. And so I wanted to find a new way of seeing the world where I could empower myself more and move beyond the victim and realize that I was now an adult and my emotional health was my responsibility. So I'm doing all these techniques. They were very much NLP, EFT, hypnotherapy based, all working within the subconscious realms. And I'm releasing all of this dense energy. And I'm noticing that the more I release, I'm having these paradigm shifts, and reality is beginning to look a little bit brighter, and things are feeling lighter, and that I'm feeling clearer, and that I'm not triggered as much. And then, of course, I begin to move on to something that's really, really important in this journey, and that's the self-love. Again, not realizing the depth of why self-love is so important, but just because at that point in time I wanted to find a space where I could be happy, where I could love myself, where I could accept myself, where I could find some self-worth, which is something I hadn't really experienced before. So this just became a journey for me that was nothing to do with ascension. I wasn't aware of the importance of this transmutation of energy for the ascension path. However, over the last 2 or 3 years, it's become clearer and clearer, at least in my understanding of what's actually happening here. And if you think about it, okay, humanity is one collective consciousness. The reality or the simulation in which we are in to have this human experience, I liken it to a program. We're existing inside a program much like a virtual reality simulation. Now, I'm not saying it is a virtual reality simulation, but I like to use it as a model because it makes it very easy to understand, because we all are aware of how these things work in the 3D realm. So within this virtual reality game that we call life on Earth, and we have these avatars in which to stream consciousness through, consciousness being our true nature, our true essence, we are subject to energetic programs. And these energetic programs that we are creating from have been on the earth for a long, long time. And so when we're born into this human form, we will be exposed to many of these programs through our life experience, which we will then hold within our human suits, within our avatars. And so a realization I had quite recently, and it was reflecting on, why do some of us have such difficult journeys? Why do some of us really go through so much in our programming years, which is from 0 to 7? And particularly in my case, I've been clearing for 10 years and I'm still not finished clearing. And you wonder if it will ever end. I wonder, will this ever end? When do I get to the point where I can just enjoy a trigger and trauma-free life? A life where I am not running the programs that were created early on in my experience. And to a large part, I'm not running these programs anymore, but the realization I had was that perhaps some of us choose to take on difficult early life experiences in order to experience as many of the programs as possible that are to be transmuted within this life. So if we've had the experience of the program, the negative program I'm going to call it, even though I don't like the word negative, the denser, the 3D program, if we've had the experience of that in this life, it's easier for us to transmute it. It's easier for us to connect to it, to alchemize it. But of course, another bigger realization is that these programs that we experienced in our early years, for example, they don't come from just our early years. These are programs that have been in our ancestry, for example, for thousands and thousands of years. So as we transmute what we think is our early year traumas, we're actually transmuting not only that pattern from our physical body, which is where we hold all of these patterns, by the way, in our avatar, in our physical being, we're also giving the opportunity, as we transmute these patterns, to transmute that throughout our ancestry. We also, as each individual, transmute these patterns of energy. We're also transmuting that for the collective, because it's one consciousness. So the more of us that have taken on this role of really taking on as many of these patterns that need transmuting as possible, and doing this intense work of having to move through processes time and time and time and time again to release these old patterns that are not going to work in a fifth dimensional earth. These patterns are of a dual nature, victim-victimizer. You know, there are dual patterns that create division, that create separation. And there are so many of these patterns that it is a big, big job that we have taken on. So to think about in one lifetime, you know, I'm 44 now, in one lifetime, have I chosen to be someone to take on the role of helping to transmute all of this so that it no longer exists in the collective consciousness? And if it no longer exists in the collective consciousness, then me and you, as creator beings, we can no longer pull from that energy, and we no longer create from that energy. Therefore, we begin to create a very different reality creation. So obviously, one individual, one node of consciousness, one avatar cannot do that job alone. And this is why there are now millions of people all over the planet actively realizing that the job here is not to get out. You know, I spent most of my life trying to escape from my body, trying to master things like astral traveling, meditation, anything where I didn't have to be in my body, to then go full circle and realize that the job is not to get out of the body. The job is to get into the body. You are not the body, you are the consciousness streams that run through the body in order to have a human experience. You run through an avatar in order to have a human experience. Now, the density, the lower level patterns, the patterns that are of a dual reality, of a 3D matrix, they're dense. They create a lot of blockages in the channels. And so what this means is it prevents a lot of the connections to the aspects to ourselves, particularly the higher vibrations, the higher streams of consciousness that we all have available to us. So the job is to be in the body, to embody the higher consciousness, all of the consciousness that we are. But in order to do that, we must transmute. We must keep transmuting, because that's what we've chosen to do. And so the conclusion that I come up with, even though each of us that are here at this point in time, even though we have many purposes, of course, and I have purposes beyond just this transmutation of old energy, I believe that every single human being that has decided to go through this ascension process, that is a purpose that every single one of us share. And that we're doing it. We've probably been doing it most of our lives. Often, all it takes is when we are confronted with a situation is to do something different to break that old pattern. When we feel the dense emotions rising up to the surface within our physical beings, is to not ignore these feelings, these emotions, is to try to learn to sit with them and hold them in loving compassion, to move the body, to do whatever it takes, whatever works for you, to allow this lower stream of consciousness to be transmuted, is to allow it to move all the way through the human body without attaching to it, so that it no longer exists in your individual avatar. And so again, as more and more people all over the planet are stepping up and realising this simple fact that we are the alchemists, we are the ones we've been waiting for. Collectively, we are the creators of this reality, this simulation, if you like. Collectively, we create this simulation from the energetic patterns that we hold within our avatars, within our human beings. And so the more of us that can just grasp the simple idea of just getting on board and transmuting and getting into the body, feeling the body, acknowledging the body, looking after the body, which then clears the channels and allows us to open up to more of the higher vibrational consciousness that we are. We then begin to create heaven on earth. And it's happening. It's been happening for a long time. You're doing it, I'm doing it, we're doing it. But just knowing how important it is to participate and understand why we're doing this will speed the process up. And so if we can all just realise that we're here to transmute that energy, it's happening through us. Hopefully we can move into a whole new reality creation as quickly as possible. So thank you for listening. I hope you found this interesting. As always, I'd love to hear any other comments, takes on this subject. It's a huge subject. This is just a short reflection. And yeah, if you want to know more or listen to any of my other stuff, check out Love Consciousness. And I'm also going to be beginning very shortly group healing sessions on Zoom, which will help with this process of releasing these patterns that we are here to alchemize, that we are here to transmute. Sending you lots and lots and lots of love. Have a beautiful day.